temple stairs, merchants counting goods, farmers complaining about the weather, possibly humanity's oldest continuous tradition. And then, in the story we usually get told, silence. Plazas empty. Roofs cave in. Plants push up through the floors of homes built by people who were absolutely certain their city would outlast them. It sounds like entire populations just stood up from dinner and walked out of history. Here's the thing though. Of the 4 so-called lost civilizations we're about to look at, only one of them actually came close to that. A real, near-total ending. The other 3 didn't vanish at all. They just stopped being where you expected to find them. Guess which one broke for real? I'll tell you at the end, you'll probably get it wrong. Start with the one you think you already know. Somewhere between the 8th and 9th centuries, across the tropical lowlands of what's now Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, the great Maya cities went quiet. Not primitive settlements, palaces, reservoirs, a writing system as sophisticated as anything in the ancient world, astronomers tracking the sky with real precision, mathematicians using the concept of 0 centuries before Europe caught up. One by one, the cities stopped raising monuments. Royal courts fell apart. And for a long time, historians filed this under the Maya disappearance. Despite one obvious problem, millions of Maya people are alive right now. Their languages, their identity, never stopped. What actually broke apart was a political order, in a specific region, at a specific moment. Climate records show severe, repeated droughts hitting exactly when the disruption starts. Brutal news for cities that fed themselves through rain-dependent farming and carefully managed reservoirs. But this wasn't the first drought the Maya had survived. What made this one different is the politics underneath it. Rival kings were already burning each other's cities, fighting over land that could barely feed anyone. Drought weakens the harvest. War makes the drought worse. A failed harvest makes the war worse. Pull one thread, and the whole arrangement tightens around your throat. Nobody vanished. They resettled towards cities with steadier water, safer trade, better odds. The forest grew back over the empty plazas, and from a distance, it looked like an entire civilization got swallowed whole. It didn't. Its cities just lost the argument for why anyone should stay. Was that the one? Keep going. Here's one you've probably never heard of, and it's bigger than anything the Maya ever built. Around the 11th century, on the banks of the Mississippi River, almost close enough to touch modern-day St. Louis, a city exploded into existence almost overnight. At its peak, it likely held somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 people, with far more in the surrounding communities, making it, at the time, the largest urban center north of Mexico. Some estimates put its population in the same range as London's, at the same point in history. More than 100 earthen mounds, some of them enormous. The largest alone contains more earth, moved entirely by hand in woven baskets, than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Just outside the city, archaeologists found a massive circle of wooden posts, nicknamed Woodhenge, precisely aligned to track the sun through the seasons. And chemical analysis of human remains shows something remarkable. A huge share of the people living here hadn't grown up locally. This place pulled people in from hundreds of miles away. Centuries before, urban migration was a phrase anyone needed. Then, by around 1350, it started emptying out. By the 1400s, it was gone. Nobody's entirely sure why. Flooding gets blamed. This was a river city. Drought may have hit the harvests. But here's the theory that fits best. A city like this doesn't run on food and water alone. It runs on trust. Thousands of strangers agreeing every day to follow the same leaders, support the same rituals, tolerate the neighbor grinding corn before sunrise. Break that trust badly enough, and the same roads that pulled migrants in start pulling them back out. And here's the part that should genuinely bother you. When European settlers first found those mounds, many of them refused to believe Native Americans had built them. They invented a myth about a vanished mound builder race, conveniently separate from the indigenous people still living in the region, because crediting the real builders was inconvenient for people trying to justify taking their land. This civilization wasn't just abandoned once, it got erased a second time, by people who needed the story to be about ghosts instead of ancestors. Now that's a real disappearance, isn't it? A city the size of a European capital, gone within a century. Its own builders written out of the story. Except its people scattered into neighboring towns whose descendants can still be traced today. The city ended. They didn't. 2 down, and both of them just walked away. The next one won't let you off that easy. You've probably heard this next myth already because it's one of the most popular collapse stories ever told. A tiny, isolated Pacific island, its people so obsessed with carving giant stone statues that they chopped down every tree to move them, triggered an ecological catastrophe, turned on each other, and had mostly wiped themselves out before a single European ship arrived in 1722. It's a great story. Much of it doesn't hold up. Rapa Nui did lose its forest. Land clearing, farming, and an invasive rat population eating seeds all likely played a role. But the population collapse before contact part isn't supported by the newer evidence. Genetic and archaeological research suggests the pre-contact population may never have been as large as the old story claimed, and there's no genetic signature of the dramatic crash the ecocide version predicts. Instead, islanders adapted building rock gardens to protect soil and hold moisture through dry seasons. So if they didn't do it to themselves, something else did. Europeans arrived, bringing diseases nobody on the island had any defense against. Slave raids in the 19th century physically dragged away a large share of the population, including many of the people who carried the island's cultural and religious knowledge. Colonial exploitation and forced labor did the rest. The population didn't gradually taper off. It was cut down hard by outsiders, who then turned around and told the world the islanders had destroyed themselves first. Was it this one? You might think so. Hold that thought. Last stop, and this one starts with a wedding. In the year 1408, at a stone church called Valsay on the edge of Norse Greenland, two people got married. We know this because it's written down, one of the last clear records we have from that colony before the trail goes cold. Not a warning, not a farewell letter. A wedding. Two people, probably nervous, probably cold, having what might have been the most ordinary day of their lives, with no idea they were about to become part of one of history's favorite mysteries. Norse settlers had lived in Greenland since the late 900s, farming, raising livestock, hunting seals and walrus. Walrus ivory, in particular, was valuable enough in medieval Europe to keep this remote outpost tied into a trade network stretching thousands of miles. For centuries, that arrangement worked. Excavated farms even show imported church bells and stained glass luxury goods, shipped to the edge of the known world, just to prove the connection was still alive. Then the climate turned. The world slid toward the Little Ice Age, colder growing seasons, worse grazing, thicker sea ice choking the sailing routes. At almost the same moment, elephant ivory flooded European markets, and the entire economic reason for this colony's existence quietly stopped mattering. Trade ships came less often. Iron and timber, things Greenland couldn't produce itself, got harder to import. The Norse adapted as best they could, leaning more on seals and marine food, but adaptation only stretches so far when isolation, failing trade, and a shrinking population all arrive at once. Most of the evidence points toward a slow fade rather than a single disaster, though not everyone agrees on that. Some researchers have raised the possibility that a final brutal winter, or tension with Inuit neighbors expanding into the same hunting grounds, helped finish off whoever was left behind. The record simply goes too quiet, too fast, to rule it out completely. What we do know: the Western settlement went silent first. The larger Eastern settlement held on longer, then went silent too. Some people likely died in hard years. Others almost certainly sailed for Iceland or Europe once staying stopped making sense. Nobody defeated this colony outright. It was slowly, quietly made irrelevant. One bad decade at a time, until the last people standing closed the doors on buildings nobody would open again for centuries. 4 stories. 4 groups of people who supposedly vanished. Now remember the question from the start? Which one actually came closest to disappearing for real? If you picked Rapa Nui, you're right, and you're also proving the point about to be made. Its population genuinely collapsed, not from bad decisions made on the island, but from disease and violence brought by outsiders who then blamed the victims for their own near erasure. That's the closest thing here to a true catastrophe. But notice what that means for the other 3. The Maya didn't vanish. An order broke, and people resettled elsewhere. Cahokia didn't vanish. Trust broke, and its people scattered into neighboring towns. Norse Greenland didn't vanish. An economy broke, and its people sailed toward wherever the numbers still worked. Even Rapa Nui's people, brutalized as they were, are still there today, protecting their language and their island. So here's the real answer to the question from the beginning. It was never really about which civilization disappeared. It's that we keep asking the wrong question. Nature applies pressure: drought, cold, dying trade, disease. What breaks isn't the people. It's whatever order was holding them together: a government, a trust, a trade route, a shared belief that tomorrow would look like today. Take that away, and everything looks like an ending. It's usually just a rearrangement. The ruins look empty for a simple reason. We're standing in the place people were smart enough to leave. One day, someone will stand in the ruins of one of our own cities and ask the same question about us. They'll probably get the wrong answer too, looking for where we disappeared to instead of where we actually went. It's rarely one dramatic ending. Something breaks. Somebody leaves. And history spends centuries mistaking the second part for the first.